You're listening to Fast Facts Perio Edition. And now, here's your host, Katrina Sanders.
Hello, and welcome to Fast Facts Perio Edition. This week, we're going to look at some of the Ayurvedic medicines or herbal products that have actually garnered some new interest because of the data points around their efficacy in managing perio. Now, it is interesting to note that although in dental and dental hygiene school, we have studied chemotherapeutic drugs, we've studied things like minocyclines, tetracyclines, and we know how wonderful those antibiotics can be, not only for lowering the bacterial loads in the subgingival pocket, but also because those particular type of antibiotics are actually re-released into that gingival crevicular fluid. We remember that gingival crevicular fluid is that serum-like fluid that the body kicks out into the sulcus. It comes from the underlying connective tissue. So as that fluid flushes out from the underlying connective tissue into the sulcus, that crevicular fluid's job is really to lavage, keep things nice and clean and homeostatic. Now, this crevicular fluid, we also recognize can be a fuel source or a nutrition source for bacteria that live in the subgingival space. So this is where we're starting to really think about, okay, what medicaments are we putting down into the pocket? Because if these medicaments have a wide range of properties, stay tuned, we'll talk about that. But if they have a wide range of properties, now it is possible that we can fight or target our medicaments in a very intentional way. When we think about the subgingival microbiota and how these bacteria, these disease-producing bacteria have evolved over time, they have literally learned how to use that crevicular fluid, the very fluid that is supposed to be used to lavage and flush everything out and to deliver antimicrobial components. Literally, the bacteria in the subgingival space have learned what that particular fluid is, and they've curated and evolved in a way where they can actually use that fluid as a fuel source for them. So now we're trying to figure out if we can deliver something into that subgingival space. It looks like a fuel source or a food source. The bacteria gobble it up, and then turns out it was not a nutritional source for that bacteria, but rather it was antibacterial or antiviral, etc., that we can see some terrific benefits on the clinical side. This is where if we can deliver things that are going to be optimal in that subgingival space for breaking down bacteria in a combination of ways, that we actually can see some improvement, some healing, and a return of these tissues back to a healthy state in a more optimal way. Okay, so this is where we're starting to look at what are we putting down in that subgingival space, and ultimately, what's the research around it? So yes, we've had antibiotics, we've had chlorhexidine, the idea being that we are delivering these chemotherapeutic drugs directly, locally into that subgingival space using a syringe or irrigating device as a means of changing what that subgingival flora looks like. Well, now we're starting to see some data points looking at turmeric or curcumin, and ultimately what some of these plant-based components are doing to help address the inflammatory process of periodontitis. Now, the reason why we're starting to see a resurgence in the focus on curcumin and turmeric is specifically because these curcumin or turmeric entities are anti-inflammatory. People in the past would take curcumin or turmeric encapsulated in a pill, and they would take that daily as a means of reducing systemic inflammation. And so this new research study is beginning to look at what happens when we use turmeric or curcumin as active ingredients inside of a subgingival medicament. So this research study comes to us looking at pharmaceutical benefits of using a curcumin gel in that subgingival space, specifically targeting chronic periodontitis patients. And what they've found is that curcumin is not only antibacterial and anti-inflammatory, it is also antioxidant and antiviral. We are starting to see that when we're able to use something that is a bit more on the plant-based side, that we're starting to see some balances inside of that microbiota, instead of destroying all bacteria, that now through the use of some of these plants, that now we're able to eradicate specifically disease-producing bacteria, preserving the environment for health-producing bacteria to be able to thrive. So these are medicaments that we're going to start seeing coming down. I will say, just on the side, that a lot of these are experimental in other countries. And although here in the States, we certainly have our own cadence and scaffolding for how we build out research in these areas, this gives us a lot of promise. Think about our patients who maybe want a more natural approach to managing their inflammatory condition. Perhaps for patients like this, the opportunity might be encouraging them to take curcumin or turmeric encapsulated. And there are several practices across the United States I know of that are using this. These are more on the holistic side, but they're using this as a terrific means of being able to support a reduction in inflammation beyond, for example, giving our patients ibuprofen or aspirin as an anti-inflammatory. So now we're starting to see that research corroborate, and the focus, the renewed concerns that we have about how we can help support our patients, not in eradicating all bacteria, but specifically the bacteria whose coordinated efforts do cause disease, that now we're starting to see plants re-enter back into the scene. And what an exciting time it is for us to really start critically looking at some of these modalities. This has been another episode of Fast Facts, Perio Edition with Katrina Sanders. Please feel free to reach me on Instagram at The Dental Wine Genist or on my website, www.katrinasanders.com. Cheers.